All right, guys, we just want to welcome back to Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick are going to do 2024 Big 12 Championship game preview and prediction in college football between Arizona State and Iowa State. ASU, 2.5-point favorites. 50.5 is the total, 12 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC from Jerry's World in Arlington, Texas. Then things started with the Arizona State offense. This is a unit Kelly Dillingham has done a great job with. Last year they were abysmal, 18 points per game. Now up to over 32 per contest this season. It starts with Sam Levy. This is a guy that transferred over from Michigan State, after barely playing there. And he's been great this season, completing 63%, about 222 yards per game, 21 touchdowns, and more importantly, only 5 interceptions. This is a very young guy who's done very well in keeping this offense stable throughout the year, Nick. The offense at times against Kansas State and against BYU kind of stalled out at times, but this is a team that's done a great job providing nice balance throughout the year. He's not really putting the ball in harm's way. He has not costed this team at all this year, other than the game, I guess, where he didn't play against Cincinnati. It's been pretty rare to see him have bad games. This is a very good player who I'd say is probably an above-average game manager at this moment in time. This is the biggest game of his life, though. How do you think he'll perform in Arlington on Saturday?
I like what Levitt's been able to do. He's been a really solid add from Michigan State. He's been solid for this team. He has 63% comp rate, 2,400 yards passing, 21 touchdowns, 5 picks, 7.3% TD ratio. He's been good. He's been really comfortable in the pocket. He's really elevated this offense. Accurate enough at times, a solid quarterback. Obviously, they're really more of a run-first team, with a player we're going to talk about in a second, and they certainly like to run the ball a lot, but this offense has been solid through the air, about 225 yards per game passing, about just under 2 touchdowns per game passing as well. So solid numbers, a good unit. They have good balance on offense, in my opinion. They can run the ball certainly with a lot of success, but they can also throw the ball. I think Levitt's been a serviceable quarterback that's had a solid season for this team.
You look at the weapons he has, and it's pretty far and few. And I thought in terms of talent, this is a pretty good receiving group. But they'd only dish it out to one guy, and that's Jordan Tyson. I first watched this guy many years ago when he was a part of that abysmal Colorado team before Deion Sanders arrived there. And he was going to be a part of Colorado's team, tore an ACL, ended up transferring out. But this is a hidden gem, Nick, that was there the entire time, and I knew he was going to have a big career eventually. 1,100 yards and 10 touchdowns. 75 receptions on 113 targets. There's only a couple of guys that have more than 40. Cam Scadaboo, we'll get to him. He has 41. Shimon Mateer at tight end. He's the second leading pass catcher here. Xavier Gilroy really hasn't been all that productive in his career since transferring over. And then Melcon Stovall as well. This is it. Jordan Tyson's the guy they give it to, or Mateer at tight end, Nick. If Tyson gets locked down, which I don't think they will, they move him around a good bit, and they're going to make sure he gets the football. That's not great, though, because Arizona State, I feel like they have more weapons than they're exploiting, but right now it's mainly just 2 guys producing on offense. Does that worry you at all?
It does worry me a little bit. Certainly you could scheme that a little bit. Tyson's a great player, right? 75 grabs for 1,100 yards. 14.7 yards per grab, 10 scores, about 91 yards per game. So, right, really good player, but it definitely is a problem because Gilroy is not having the season that we hoped he would, under 300 yards receiving, 17.1 yards per grab, and 3 scores. Shimon Mateer has been solid at tight end, 285 and 5 scores. But you really do worry because it's a Tyson show on offense in terms of receiving. Also, Cam Scadaboo has 468 yards receiving and 2 scores. He's the second highest receiver on the team with 35 grabs. So Tyson is 75, far and away the top receiver on the team. Certainly concerning when you play against these better teams that can scheme and afford to scheme that way against that and defend that one pass catcher particularly there. I think it's certainly concerning if you're an Arizona State fan. This could get very messy if Tyson has a bad day.
Now we go, of course, to the heart and soul of this team. A guy who's great in Cam Scadaboo. When we did our preview and predictions, Arizona State, they were first in the alphabet, so they'd always be one of the top teams we did, so we remember the stuff with them a little bit more than other teams. And Cam Scadaboo, when he transferred in 2 years ago, he always stood out because he was a beast at Sacramento State. Was a little bit quiet last year, but most people knew about him. Everyone knows about him this year. He's finally been able to fully stay healthy and be a part of something great on a prospering offense. 1,400 yards rushing, 17 touchdowns. You alluded to him having almost 500 receiving yards and another 2 touchdowns. This guy's an old school type of back, Nick, 5'11", 215. Some Christian McCaffrey comparisons for good reason, his versatility. This is a very good running back going up against the team that's really struggled against the run this year. They're going to feed him 20-plus carries in 6 out of the last 7 games that he's played in. This is a beast. He's a workhorse. He's going to produce.
This is a guy that's so good for this team. Cam Scadaboo is so fun to watch. He's such a talented back full stop. 1,400 yards rushing, 5.7 yards per carry, 17 scores, in addition to 35 yards receiving, or 35 receptions, that is, for 500 yards, 19 total touchdowns from scrimmage, 1860 in terms of yards from scrimmage, 6.6 average on plays from scrimmage. He's been phenomenal, right? Cam Skattebo is such a fun player to watch, a guy that I really enjoy, and really having that great season that you really thought he could have. He was such a talented player at Sacramento State, so fun to watch in those offensive setups, and he is really just having a great season here. When you transferred over, you were expecting big things. He had an okay season last year in the Pac-12, right? 783, 9 touchdowns, but really doubling those numbers, really looking effective and efficient. It's really good. Kind of reminds me of Cody Schrader at Missouri last year, who transferred up from Truman State and really had a phenomenal season there. I like what Cam Skattebo could do. It's going to run through him on the offense, feed him in Arlington, and I think you'll find success.
And Kyson Brown, number 2, has been pretty good. Over 300 yards the last 6 games. Got the start against UCF. Had 100 yards against Arizona this past Saturday. So he didn't play really much at all in the early part of the year, but he's been pretty good. So 2 nice backs here. Skattebo, of course, is going to lead the way. Look at this offensive line; it's greatly improved. Joshua Atkins at left tackle has been a little bit strugglesome. Him and Emmett Bolvin sharing that position. Bull, I think, certainly the better player. A guy who's 6'6", 310. He had a great game against Arizona at left guard. How nice is it to see Ben Coleman on the field? This is another one of those guys, Nick, that transferred in, and we talked about how good he would be for them. Didn't play last year. Has been great pass protection. Leifiu Fontanu has been a phenomenal pass blocker at center. Kyle Scott, maybe one of the weaker links for them at right guard. The Max Enick Ancor at right tackle has been great as well. This is an offensive line, certainly not perfect by any means, but I think this is a tough physical group that helps turn the way for all those rushing yards.
This is a good physical group. Ben Coleman's been really solid at left guard, a great player to see there. Josh Atkins was a good add out of the portal, has been really solid at left tackle as well. I like what this offensive line can do. This is a good unit here. They have a tough test against Iowa State, but I really like what this unit can do.
Now we move to the Iowa State offense. This is a group that's also equally as exciting, putting up 31.2 points per game. Rocco Beck, this is a guy that we were high on coming into the year. We thought he was a pretty respectable quarterback, one of the better ones in the conference that no one really knew about. 20 touchdowns, 8 picks, over 3,000 yards. He really had to carry this offense throughout the year. At times, only had 137 passing in the bad weather against Kansas State. I think he'll settle down and have a much better game because that's uncharacteristic of him to play that bad after putting up 200 yards per contest over the last 2 months. This is a guy who can make a lot of plays of his legs as well. I don't know if you saw the UCF game where he was somehow making plays running the ball. He had 20 carries for 97 yards. That's the only time this year he's had more than 8 carries in a game because he was so confident in his abilities and his playmaking. Had 2 touchdowns as well. That's a player, Nick, that shows a lot of competitive toughness because that was a guy that was not going to be denied that day in a game that really got away with him some bad mistakes. 272 rushing, 7 scores on the year. What do you think of Rocco Beck? Because this guy is incredibly competitive. He's a gamer, has a little bit of Max Duggan, I think, in him.
He's a gamer. He's a guy that's going to want to go out there and fight for his team. Not having the best season statistically, but still is one of those players that's such a leader on the sidelines and really puts in that effort every single game. 6% comp rate, 3,000 yards passing, 20 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Obviously a bit of a turnover issue at times this year. Solid on the ground as well, 272 and 7 scores. He's a leader. He's a guy you want to fight for, a guy who's going to amp you up and fight for you in the locker room. A really good leader. Got to cut down on the turnovers. Can't make mistakes against this Arizona State secondary, but I like what he's done this year. I think he's a fun player to watch. I think he's have a good shot here to make some noise, make some fireworks happen down there in Arlington.
And I talked about how Arizona State only has 2 guys on offense. Same thing can be said for Iowa State, where they have only 2 guys that get every single target. Jalen Noel, Jaden Higgins, these are phenomenal receivers. They both have over 100 targets this year. That's pretty much it. There's only one other guy with more than 20, that being Gabe Burkle at tight end. Benjamin Brahmer at tight end. That was a big loss for them. I don't know when he's coming back or if he is at all. He hasn't played in 2 months. That was going to be their number 3 option. They haven't wavered since. These 2 receivers both have over 1,000 yards, combined 15 touchdowns. They're not just guys that hoard targets. These are legitimate talents, Nick. Noel in the slot, Higgins out wide with great hands. The route running from Noel was incredibly tough to defend. These guys are very good. They don't drop the ball very often. They don't fumble the ball very often. Their ball security is top-notch. I love this duo. I think it's the best in the country.
This is a great duo here. This is a duo that you really want to watch. And I think it's a fun duo that this offense has that can really go out here and make some big noise. Higgins is a really solid player at over 1,000 yards receiving, 13.4 yards per grab, 9 scores. Noel, same deal, over 1,000 yards, 15.1 and 6 scores. These guys are awesome. I think, Gabe Burkle at tight end is not a bad piece either. 208 for him as a traditional tight end. Outside of that, though, not a whole lot of production here. Higgins and Noel, these guys 1-2 punch here. You're going to target them. One in the slot, one more than exterior wide receiver. I really like what these two can do, though. These are great veteran leaders, great players, really good route trees as well on both of them. I like what they can do.
You look at a rushing attack, it's got a three-headed monster led by Carson Hansen, 6'18", 11 scores. Abu Sama really didn't have the year I thought he would, but he's a pretty impressive talent. Jalen Jackson's been a hard runner as well. Either three of these guys can really pop off at any given moment. 165 yards per game rushing. Really haven't been upended too many times this year. They weren't all that good against Kansas, but they're playing from behind. For the most part, though, they provide adequate balance, Nick. This is a good rushing attack. I mean, they get a lot of carries, too. They certainly want to run the football. Almost 38 attempts per game as a team. What do you make of this monster, this three-headed monster here at running back for Iowa State, and how effective will they be in this matchup?
This is a three-headed monster that's really hard to defend against and a really good unit. Hansen and Sama are two solid backs. 6'18" for Hansen's, 4.9 yards to carry, 11 scores. Sama 547, 4.8 and 2 scores for him. Jalen Jackson is really solid as well. Plus Rocco Beck can run. There's 4 different guys here that can really chew up yardage against you. All of them have at least 20 yards per game on the ground. Good numbers there. Out of that, a solid, productive unit. And this offense can certainly run the ball. They're really solid at doing that.
Now you look at the defensive line for Arizona State as we shift forward to their defense. It's been a solid run defending unit this year. It hasn't been exactly spectacular, but they haven't been bad. 116 yards per game allowed, 18 touchdowns. Have not given up 200 yards in a game, and over the last month they've played some tough attacks, and they've been good against them. 177 against UCF. It's not the greatest number, but against that attack, they can burn you. It certainly is. And then BYU, they held them to under 100, and then they clobbered Arizona, which everyone has done. But I think for the most part, this will be a competitive matchup in the trenches, Nick. Clayton Smith, he's going to be their top edge rusher here. CJ Fight, Elijah O'Neal, Jeff Clark, Justin Woodley. It's a solid unit here. There's no real standouts. This is a team that doesn't have a great pass rush either. But again, a competitive matchup. We'll get to the linebackers. That's probably a big reason why they're so good. But they're not going to create too many negative plays in terms of tackles for loss or sacks. And I think Arizona State, this is going to be an opportunity for them to prove some muscle against a good offense. I just don't know how good they will be. But again, competitive will be the matchup.
It's going to be a competitive matchup. Certainly, this defensive line that's got some good pieces here. They're an average unit, nothing crazy in the day. I do think this is a decent matchup for them. Clayton Smith, 27 total tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. CJ Fight, 27 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. Elijah O'Neal, 25 total tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. Justin Woody, Jeffrey Clark each have 20 tackles total for them, a couple tackles for loss for each. Zach Swanson has been okay at times, 16 total tackles. And then Jacob Kayaga, when he's fully healthy, 9.9 total tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks for him. Prince Dorba as well has been okay, 11 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. Very average unit, average productivity. No one really outstanding there on the defensive line, but still a good unit that gets in the backfield and gets enough sacks to get the job done. Can they contain Rocco Beach? I think it's certainly possible, but it may be difficult to do so. He's a very talented runner. Keep him in the backfield, lock him up, and make sure you put some pressure on him, and you could have a successful day.
Yeah, again, it's mainly because of this linebacking group led by Miles Rouser and Keyshawn Elliott, the 2 New Mexico State transfers, having phenomenal years, especially against the run. Rouser's a beast in coverage because he's also a defensive back. He's really a safety, but he plays in the box so much. He's pretty much a linebacker for him. Caleb McCullough, he's having a much better year than expected. Great run defender, efficient tackler as well. Jordan Crook's been a solid, respectable player also. I like these linebackers, Nick. They're, the soul of this football team. It seems to be a lot of veteran leadership here in the middle for Arizona State. What do you make of this group here? They'll have some heavy lifting to do against a tougher rushing attack.
A lot of different linebackers, they rotate in and out, plus Rouser playing inside the box. A very deep unit in that regard. 87 total tackles for Rouser, leads the team with that number. 4 tackles for loss, 5 pass breakups. He's a do-it-all player. I like what he can do. Caleb McCollum is solid as well. 68 total tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 2 picks for him. Good numbers. Keyshawn Elliott, 53 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2 pass breakups for him. Jordan Crook has been solid, 46 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss. While Zarius Pfizer as well, 31 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss for him, and a pick 6. Good numbers of this linebacking core. A lot of different pieces that rotate in and out. I really like this unit.
I moved to an Arizona State secondary. This is probably where things are going to get a little bit uneasy for Kenny Dillingham in this week's game plan. They've been good throughout the year, holding teams under 60% completion rating, 14 touchdowns, 14 picks. I know they just faced Tataroa McMillan and held them in check. But Arizona's not a very good team, top to bottom. They don't have much versatility in the receiving group. Against BYU, they left a lot of opportunities on the table throughout the day, passing the ball. Kansas State, they were able to snag 2 picks from them. But throughout the year, this has been a group that really hasn't shown much muscle in the secondary. Keith Abney, Javan Robinson, these guys really aren't all that great in coverage. I think they're good run defenders, though. Terrence Welsh, he'll be the third corner. He's not all that great either. In the slot, it's going to be a major matchup for Shamari Simmons, leads the team in tackles for loss. Another one of those guys that really just makes a lot of plays in the line, in the backfield at the line of scrimmage. Has been respectable in coverage. And, of course, the aforementioned Miles Rouser, he's going to have some big-time responsibilities, along with Xavier Alford, who's having a great year, top to bottom in coverage. There's going to be a lot of matchups for these receivers, Nick, that can take advantage of, and I think Higgins and Knoll, they're going to win a lot of these matchups. The secondary, though, they're going to have to make big plays. They're going to have to play with some nice energy. They've had a knack for finding the football this year, and I think that's something that might give them an upper hand, because I think there's some nice ball skills here, but overall coverage ability is questionable.
They got to be strong here in coverage. I think it's certainly questionable what they can do in the coverage in terms of the secondary. I worry about their man coverage. I worry about their press coverage. I really do worry about what they can do overall. Xavier Alford's a good player, though. 75 total tackles, 4 pass breakups, 2 picks for him. Shamari Simmons is decent as well. 65 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 3 pass breakups for him. He's a physical tackler that's been solid in coverage at times. Keith Albine has been really good for this team as well. 46 total tackles, 7 pass breakups for him. Javion Robinson has been solid as well. 31 total tackles, 2 interceptions, 3 pass breakups. Decent numbers there. And then Terrence Welsh has probably been their best coverage asset. 7 pass breakups, 2 interceptions, including one he took for a pick 6, and 19 total tackles. He's a really good defensive player for this team. He's going to be strong in coverage. He's got to have a good day here. Got to be really strong in this matchup if they want to succeed. Those are 2 really good receivers for Iowa State. They're going to press this defense. Can they come out on top? It's certainly something to keep an eye on.
Now he'd move to the Iowa State defense, starting with their run-stopping unit. Not been great this year, giving up 173 yards per game. They were pretty competitive last time out, though, against Kansas State. DJ Giddens, he had one big run to boost up his total. Other than that, they were able to be quite well against them. Cincinnati and Kansas, though, had a field day running the ball. UCF had 354 yards. Iowa had 200-plus. These are all elite backs they faced and got absolutely burned against, Nick. Now they're facing Cam Scadaboo. It's going to be tough here. Even the last time out, that was certainly encouraging. The consistency this year has just not been found against the run. Joey Peterson, J.R. Singleton up front. Those are going to be your standouts. Dom Orange as well. He's going to be your best player. Tyler Adema, he's respectable as well. This is a team that's just not been all that great, Nick. This defensive line, they're going to have to be great. They're probably going to have to stack the box to slow down this group. In linebacker, this was a group that was in flux to start the year with so many injuries. Cooper Ebels had to be on the field the most, and he's just been abysmal. 23 missed tackles, hasn't been great against the run. They've had to get some of these DBs down to the box a little bit more, and that certainly has made them more vulnerable against the run. Jacob Ellis has also played a good bit. It's probably been a little bit better than Abel. This front 7, Nick, is a front 6 because of the scheme they run. I'm very interested to see what John Heacock does because they've just not been good against the run. Not everything's entirely their fault, but next man up, and they just have not been all that great.
They've not been good against the run, and that really is good if you're Cam Scadaboo, who's going to look at this and say, hey, I can run all over this defense. I think I have a great opportunity to do so because this team has just not been good against the run, and it's been one of their fatal flaws this year for Iowa State, the defensive side of the ball. Joey Peterson, 37 total tackles, 6 sacks for loss, 2 sacks for him. Tyler Odemim has been solid as well, 31 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss. J.R. Singleton, 29 total tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks for him. Dominique Orange has been solid as well, 18 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss. For them, and then Miles Mendoza has been okay, 13 total tackles in rotational reps. This is a unit that's not super deep. They have some solid pieces, but they've been struggling against the run. The run has been tough on them the last couple of games. Can they win this battle? I think it's certainly going to be tough to do so. And if Cam Scadaboo has a good day, you're going to be in a lot of trouble for Iowa State.
Jack Sadowski will be another starting linebacker for them on the field, but it really has been a troublesome issue for them. We'll move to the secondary. I think this is an incredibly talented group. I thought it was one of the top in the country coming into the year. Darian Porter, Jontez Williams out wide. These guys are magnificent corners. Miles Purchase, on the other hand, was supposed to have a big-time year, and he hasn't been as good in coverage, so he struggled as a tackler. This is a team that's incredibly full of talent, though. Jeremiah Cooper in the slot. This guy has tremendous ball skills. Has been a lesser run defender this year. And then Bayou Freiler, this is a big-time player as well. This is a secondary. It's full of talent, Nick. There's guys here that can produce, but again, having to play more guys in the box is certainly letting them getting burned against the deep ball. But for the most part, they can hold up well, so they can put in an impressive performance against the run. I'm confident in their ability to slow down the passing attacks. But it's really been against big opponents. They've struggled to allow big passing or to limit big passing plays. That's not their forte, though. Iowa State typically plays very sound in the back end, but the DBs will have to be big in tackling in this game.
The DBs will have to be big in tackling, not to clean up the tackles. The top 2 tacklers on this team are DBs. Malik Verdon, 75 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, a pick, 5 pass breakups. Bo Filer has been okay as well, 74 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 picks, 4 pass breakups. Jeremiah Cooper's probably been their best coverage asset, 43 total tackles, a pick, or 2 picks for him, plus 6 pass breakups. And then Jontez Williams, 38 total tackles, 4 interceptions, 4 pass breakups, another good coverage asset. This secondary has to be good here. They got to be good cleaning and tackling. Got to clean up the tackles, certainly in this matchup. I worry about this secondary. I worry about both teams' secondary. I wonder who's going to come out on top and have the better day here.
Yeah, the big plays mainly come on the ground for Iowa State's defense. The secondary, though, if they had a much better front 6, I think that they would certainly be talked about as one of the best in the country. Looking at the tail of the tape, the team comparisons. Before we get to that, though, one thing that I forgot to mention is they're one of the worst pass rushes in the country as well, Nick, so that certainly doesn't make things any easier, but at the same time showcases how impressive the secondary is. I think they're like 125th nationally in that number. 15, so that's another thing to consider here. Tail of the tape, Iowa State will give them the edge at quarterback. I think at running back, Scatterbill will clear that one, even over the 3-headed monster they have. Wide receiver and O-line. I think O-line's in favor of Arizona State, and wide receiver will go in favor of the Cyclones. D-line, the Sun Devils, along with their linebacking group, while secondary, they'll clear that one with ease. These teams are all over the place, Nick. There's plenty of different edges for a variety of different teams. What are your thoughts on what we're going to get out of these rosters?
Yeah, these teams are all over the place. I think this is a very balanced matchup because you have teams that have advantages in several different places across the board. In the end, these teams are very balanced. This is a very balanced matchup across the board. I think both these teams are really good. I think Arizona State certainly excels in some positions, defensive line and running back, certainly linebacking core. I like that a lot as well. But the Iowa State advantage is quarterback, wide receiver. Those are very key advantages in the secondary as well as a key one. So very interesting to see how that balances out on Saturday.
And look at the final thoughts and the prediction. This is going to be a great game, Nick. I think for Arizona State, feed the beast, Scatterbill, get back to the ground because his rushing ability can certainly burn you. His ability to make plays on the run, throwing the ball is very impressive as well. Don't let 2 guys beat you for Iowa State. Your defense has got to be able to contain Scatterbill and Jordan Tyson. I guess the same thing could be said for Arizona State because it's really just 2 guys. Attack downfield often, though, against these corners, and I think they will. I don't know who set this line so low, Nick. I think this just has the makings of a shootout. Neither D-line is all that great. Iowa State can't stop the run. Arizona State, they've done well, but they don't have much of a pass rush, and their corners aren't all that good. This isn't a clear with ease. I'm going to stick with Arizona State, though, 38-35 between the muscle of Cam. Big fan of both of these teams. I don't care which one makes the playoff. I'd be a fan of either one. I typically always root for Iowa State because I'm a big fan of Matt Campbell, but I'm also a fan of what Scabadoo can accomplish. And he's just worked too hard, Nick. He's bled too hard to get to an opportunity like this to pass it up. So he's going to have a monster day, and they'll be going to the college football playoff in a shootout.
I agree. 2 teams I like here in Iowa State and Arizona State. Matt Campbell, a guy I really like. Maybe getting some looks potentially if Ryan Day gets fired in Columbus. Maybe Matt Campbell gets a look. Going to just throw that out there, see what people think in the comments about that. I think it could really work out potentially in Columbus, but that's getting ahead of myself. I think the keys for Arizona State are going to happen. Both of them. They're going to feed Cam Scatterbill, and they'll get Rocco Beach to the ground a fair amount, and that will really set the tone in this game and get the job done. I like what they could do. I think Scatterbill can really tear you apart, and this Iowa State run defense has been weak at times this year. I think they're going to have a good day. I'm going to take Arizona State to win this one in the end. I think they'll get enough done ultimately to win this game and punch a berth in the college football playoff, which really, you think about it, Kenny Dillingham inherited a terrible roster that was absolutely awful. The youngest coach in FBS Power 4, and he's going to get his team to the college football playoff potentially in year 2. I mean, just an incredible turnaround for this guy. He's really coaching a great team out there in the desert, really building something phenomenal, inheriting a bad team and turning things around rapidly. I really like what I've seen out of him and his program's long-term stability, what they've done in the transfer portal, bringing in different guys like Scatterbill, who played at Sacramento State, who's developed into an absolute star for this team. This is a fun matchup. The Big 12 is always a little bit wacky. This is obviously the first appearance of the Big 12 title game for Arizona State in their first year. Iowa State previously played 1 game in 2020 when, Matt Campbell led a great team during the COVID year. That team was number 8 in the country at that moment in time. And they ended up losing a great game against Oklahoma in that one. There's always been some good ones the last couple of years. The game in 2022 was phenomenal. The game in 2021 and 2020 were all really interesting, as well as that 2019 game. So some great matchups. Last year's was a bit of a blowout, but had some interesting moments as well, with Texas going to college football playoff. I like the Big 12 title game. It's certainly worth a watch. And in that noon slate, you got to tune in and check it out, plus the MAC at the same time as well. A really good way to start your conference championship Saturday.
And this conference has been complete madness all year long. So to suggest that this game would be anything less than that would be crazy, Nick. This is going to be the best game of the day, I think, and I think it truly will be a shootout. A lot of value here. It's a complete toss-up. I think Arizona State gets the job done, but again, that over is going to clear with ease, I would say. This one's going to come down to the buzzer. It might even go to overtime.
It's a great matchup. I think it could potentially go to overtime. I really like this balance between these two teams. A really fun shootout in line down there in Jerry's world.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.